Prosperity is often spoken about as if it were a destination, a moment when everything finally aligns and life becomes lighter, safer, and more abundant. Yet for many people, the real pain is not the absence of money itself, but the quiet confusion of doing everything right on the surface and still feeling stuck inside. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from believing in abundance, studying manifestation, repeating affirmations, and trying to stay positive, while everyday financial choices continue to be driven by anxiety, urgency, or fear of loss. Over time, this creates an invisible fracture between what the mind declares and what the body actually practices, and it is within this fracture that auto-deception quietly grows. This video is an invitation to pause and look honestly at that space, without judgment and without spiritual shortcuts. Prosperity, in its deepest sense, is not about forcing reality to comply with desire, but about developing inner coherence. When intention, action, and emotional state move in different directions, life responds with instability, mixed results, and repeated cycles that feel almost cruel. When they move together, something subtle but powerful changes. Decisions become calmer, opportunities are perceived more clearly, and money stops being a source of constant emotional tension. Here, prosperity is not treated as a miracle or a promise, but as a relationship with time, with choice, with responsibility, and with the nervous system that governs how you respond under pressure. Many people unknowingly sabotage their own growth, not because they lack faith, but because their inner state is trained for survival rather than stability. This training shapes spending habits, risk tolerance, avoidance patterns, and even the ability to receive. As you listen, allow yourself to let go of the need to impress the universe or prove spiritual worth. This is not about becoming someone else. It is about removing the subtle lies that keep you acting against your own future. Prosperity begins the moment honesty replaces fantasy and alignment replaces effort. There is a quiet contradiction that lives inside many people who sincerely believe in prosperity. On the surface, they speak the language of abundance, trust, and alignment. They repeat phrases about the universe providing, about money flowing, about everything happening at the right time. Yet beneath those words, their emotional posture tells a different story. Their shoulders tighten when bills arrive. Their breath shortens when unexpected expenses appear. Their mind rushes when making financial decisions, not from clarity, but from fear of falling behind. This contradiction is not hypocrisy, it is conditioning. It is the result of a nervous system trained by years of uncertainty, scarcity, or emotional pressure, now trying to operate inside a belief system that promises ease and flow. Auto-deception often begins as protection. At some point in life, believing that everything will work out may have been the only way to survive emotionally. It softened disappointment, reduced anxiety, and offered hope when control felt impossible. Over time, however, this belief can become a substitute for presence. Instead of observing patterns, questioning impulses, or noticing avoidance, the mind covers discomfort with spiritual language. Faith becomes a shield rather than a lens. Prosperity is no longer something built through coherence, but something waited for, almost negotiated with life itself. What makes this form of auto-deception especially difficult to see is that it feels virtuous. It feels patient. It feels evolved. The person is not rejecting responsibility consciously, they are postponing it emotionally. There is a subtle belief that awareness alone should be enough, that understanding concepts should automatically translate into results. When results do not come, confusion replaces curiosity. Doubt grows, not toward the belief itself, but toward the self. Why does this work for others but not for me? Becomes an unspoken question that slowly erodes confidence. The body, however, tells the truth long before the mind is ready to hear it. When money enters, the body reacts. When money leaves, the body reacts. These reactions are not moral failures, they are signals. Tension, urgency, avoidance, and impulsivity are forms of communication. They reveal whether prosperity is associated internally with safety or threat. Many people unknowingly associate having money with pressure, visibility, responsibility, or loss of connection. Others associate not having enough with familiarity, identity, or even belonging. Until these associations are acknowledged, No affirmation can override them for long. Another layer of this auto-deception appears in the way time is perceived. There is often an unconscious expectation that alignment should produce immediate relief. If clarity does not arrive quickly, impatience sets in. If income does not increase soon, discouragement follows. This creates a cycle where decisions are rushed in order to escape discomfort. Rushed decisions rarely lead to stability. They lead to temporary relief, followed by deeper stress. Over time, this reinforces the belief that prosperity is unpredictable, fragile, or always just out of reach. What is rarely discussed is that prosperity requires emotional tolerance. The ability to sit with uncertainty without collapsing into fear. The ability to hold responsibility without feeling crushed by it. The ability to receive without guilt or self-sabotage. These capacities are not developed through belief alone. They are developed through repeated experiences of choosing presence over escape. When this development is skipped, spiritual language fills the gap, offering meaning without integration. There is also the social dimension of auto-deception. Many people carry inherited narratives about money, success, and worth. They may come from families where money caused conflict, silence, or shame. In such environments, financial growth can feel like betrayal. Even when consciously desiring prosperity, there may be an unconscious loyalty to struggle. Spiritual explanations then become convenient ways to avoid confronting these emotional loyalties. The universe becomes the reason progress stalls, rather than unresolved internal conflict. True alignment begins when these patterns are observed without drama. Not judged, not romanticized, but seen. When someone notices that they feel anxious before checking their account, that noticing itself is a form of honesty. When they recognize a tendency to delay decisions that require structure, that recognition is already movement. Prosperity does not respond to perfection, it responds to coherence. Coherence grows when the inner story matches the outer behavior. This chapter is not about removing faith, but refining it. Faith that denies reality becomes fragile. Faith that includes reality becomes grounded. When belief and behavior begin to speak the same language, something shifts quietly. Choices slow down. Reactions soften. The future stops feeling like a threat that must be outrun. In that space, prosperity ceases to be an event and becomes a direction, shaped not by wishful thinking, but by honest participation in one's own life. Intention as an inner compass. Rather than a wish, intention is often misunderstood as a mental declaration, a sentence spoken inwardly with hope attached to it. Yet intention in its deeper form is not what the mind says it wants, but what the whole system is prepared to stand behind. Many people sincerely intend prosperity, stability, and freedom, but their inner compass remains fragmented. One part longs for expansion, another fears exposure, and another clings to familiar patterns that once offered emotional safety. When intention is fragmented in this way, life reflects that fragmentation through inconsistent outcomes and repeated financial confusion. What makes intention fragile is not lack of desire, but lack of definition at the level of identity. A vague intention allows the mind to imagine improvement without committing to internal change. Words like abundance or success can mean entirely different things depending on the emotional history behind them. For some, abundance represents peace and spaciousness. For others, it represents pressure, expectation, or the fear of losing control. When these meanings are not examined, intention becomes symbolic rather than functional. It sounds elevated, but it does not guide behavior when emotions intensify. The nervous system plays a silent role in this process. Intention that is not integrated into the body remains theoretical. Under stress, the body defaults to what it knows, not to what it hopes for. This is why people often make financial decisions that contradict their stated goals. In moments of discomfort, urgency overrides clarity. The intention to build stability dissolves in the face of emotional relief. This is not weakness, it is conditioning expressing itself through choice. Intention becomes powerful when it stops being an aspiration and starts becoming a reference point. A reference point does not demand constant motivation. It quietly informs perception. When intention is clear, certain options feel incongruent even if they promise immediate comfort. Other options feel aligned even if they require patience. This shift does not come from discipline alone, but from an internal agreement about who one is becoming. Identity precedes consistency. There is also a subtle emotional cost to carrying intentions that are not embodied. Over time, the gap between what one says they want and how they live creates self-distrust. The inner voice becomes less credible. Promises made to oneself lose weight. This erosion of self-trust affects prosperity more than external circumstances ever could. Without trust, decisions are second-guessed, opportunities are missed, and momentum collapses under hesitation. Clarity of intention restores this trust gradually, not through force but through coherence. When intention aligns with realistic capacity, the system relaxes. There is less internal conflict, less need to justify behavior, and less pressure to perform spiritually. Prosperity thrives in this relaxed clarity because decisions are no longer reactive. They are contextual. They consider both present reality and future continuity. Another overlooked aspect of intention is its relationship with renunciation. Every genuine direction implies something left behind. When this is not acknowledged, intention remains idealized. The mind imagines growth without loss, gain without adjustment. Reality does not operate that way. Stability requires saying no to certain impulses, certain identities, and certain emotional shortcuts. Without recognizing this, intention becomes a source of frustration rather than guidance. Intention that includes renunciation feels quieter, more grounded. It does not seek validation. It does not rush to prove itself. It simply holds a line internally. This internal line changes how money is approached. Spending becomes less about soothing discomfort and more about supporting continuity. Earning becomes less about proving worth and more about creating sustainability. Receiving becomes less threatening because it is no longer tied to identity performance. There is also a temporal aspect to intention that is often ignored. Short-term intention focuses on relief. Long-term intention focuses on coherence. When the long-term perspective is absent, the system is pulled toward immediate resolution of discomfort. This is where many financial patterns repeat. The person intends freedom, but chooses urgency, intends peace, but chooses avoidance, intends growth, but chooses familiarity. These choices are not moral failures, they are misaligned time horizons. As intention stabilizes, time perception shifts. Patience no longer feels like deprivation. Waiting becomes an active state rather than a passive one. This changes how opportunities are evaluated. Not every possibility feels urgent. Not every offer feels necessary. Discernment replaces hunger. This discernment is one of the most practical expressions of prosperity consciousness, even though it is rarely labeled as such. Ultimately, intention is not about commanding life, but about orienting the self. It is the quiet agreement to live in a way that future versions of oneself can inhabit with less tension. When intention functions as an inner compass rather than a wish, it does not need to be repeated constantly. It is reflected in tone, pace, and choice. And as this alignment deepens, prosperity stops being something pursued externally and starts becoming something generated through consistency and trust in one's own direction. Action as a mirror of inner truth. Rather than an act of force, action is often portrayed as effort, discipline, or the ability to push through resistance. In the context of prosperity, this framing creates unnecessary tension. When action is driven by force, it quickly becomes unsustainable. The body tightens, the mind rebels, and consistency collapses under emotional fatigue. What is rarely acknowledged is that action is not separate from inner state. It is an extension of it. The way someone acts with money reveals far more about their relationship with safety, time, and self-trust than any belief they consciously hold. Many people believe they lack discipline, when in reality they lack internal permission to move slowly and coherently. Their actions swing between intensity and avoidance. One moment is filled with motivation, organization, and ambitious planning. The next is marked by exhaustion, disengagement, and quiet self-criticism. This oscillation is not random. It reflects an inner environment where pressure replaces structure and urgency replaces rhythm. Prosperity struggles to take root in such conditions because it depends on continuity, not bursts of effort. When action is misaligned with inner capacity, it becomes performative. Tasks are done to relieve anxiety or to prove worth, rather than to build stability. Financial actions taken from this place often look productive on the surface, yet they carry an undertone of desperation. Decisions are made quickly to escape discomfort. Commitments are accepted without clarity, and systems are created without regard for sustainability. Over time, this pattern reinforces the belief that progress is exhausting and short-lived. The body responds to these patterns with signals that are often ignored. Fatigue, irritability, and resistance are not signs of laziness. They are indicators of misalignment. When action consistently violates inner limits, the system protects itself by withdrawing energy. This withdrawal is frequently misinterpreted as lack of motivation, leading to more force and deeper exhaustion. The cycle continues until action itself becomes emotionally charged and associated with failure. Action becomes transformative when it stops being an attempt to override the self and starts reflecting internal coherence. Coherent action feels quieter. It does not require constant emotional build-up. It emerges naturally from clarity and repeats without drama. This kind of action does not seek immediate validation. It is not concerned with appearing productive. Its focus is continuity. Continuity creates trust, and trust stabilizes decision-making. In the realm of finances, coherent action often appears unremarkable. It may involve reviewing information regularly, making incremental adjustments, or maintaining simple systems over time. Because these actions lack emotional intensity, they are often undervalued. Yet they are precisely what allow prosperity to accumulate without volatility. When action aligns with inner truth, money stops being a source of emotional spikes and becomes part of a predictable rhythm. Another important aspect of action is environment. Behavior does not exist in isolation. It is shaped by context. When surroundings are chaotic, unclear, or overstimulating, even the clearest intention struggles to translate into consistent action. Many people blame themselves for inconsistency without noticing that their environment constantly pulls them toward distraction or urgency. Prosperity-oriented action requires conditions that support focus and regulation, not constant self-control. Action also reveals one's relationship with time. Those who feel perpetually behind tend to act reactively. Decisions are rushed, shortcuts are taken, and long-term consequences are minimized. This time, pressure is rarely objective. It is emotional. It stems from an internal narrative of scarcity, where there is never enough time, money, or opportunity. When this narrative drives action, it creates the very instability it fears. Slowing down internally changes how time is experienced, even when external demands remain the same. There is a subtle dignity in action that honors pacing. It recognizes that growth does not require constant acceleration. Financial maturity develops when choices are made with awareness of their future impact, not just their immediate relief. This awareness cannot be forced. It emerges as the nervous system learns that safety does not depend on urgency. As this learning deepens, action becomes less reactive and more deliberate. Self-trust is rebuilt through action that is kept small enough to be sustained. When commitments are realistic, follow-through becomes possible. Each completed action reinforces credibility with oneself. Over time, this credibility accumulates. The inner voice becomes steadier. Decisions feel less fraught. Money-related actions lose their emotional charge and begin to resemble neutral movements rather than tests of worth. Prosperity is not created by heroic effort. It is created by repeated alignment between intention and behavior. Action that mirrors inner truth does not seek to impress. It seeks to remain. It respects limits, acknowledges capacity, and adapts without self-punishment. In this way, action becomes a form of integrity rather than exertion. As integrity strengthens, life responds differently. Not through sudden miracles, but through increased stability. Opportunities are recognized earlier. Risks are assessed more accurately. Mistakes are corrected without collapse. Action taken from coherence generates feedback that can be integrated rather than defended against. This integration is what allows growth to compound rather than reset. In this chapter, action is reframed not as something to conquer, but as something to align with. When action reflects inner truth, prosperity stops feeling like a distant reward and starts feeling like a natural outcome of consistency. The quieter the action, the deeper its impact. And in that quiet continuity, the foundation for lasting financial clarity is slowly, reliably built. Vibration, as emotional coherence that shapes perception and choice. Vibration is often spoken about as if it were an abstract frequency floating somewhere beyond the body, something to be raised through thought alone. Yet in lived experience, vibration is far more intimate and grounded. It is the emotional tone that colors perception, the background state that determines how situations are interpreted before logic even enters. In the context of prosperity, vibration is not mystical, it is relational. It reflects how safe, regulated, and present a person feels while interacting with uncertainty, responsibility, and time. Many people attempt to cultivate a higher vibration while remaining internally tense. They smile through anxiety, affirm through exhaustion, and visualize abundance while their body remains braced for loss. This creates a subtle internal split. The mind reaches upward, while the nervous system stays on guard. Over time, this split becomes exhausting because it requires constant management of emotion rather than integration. Prosperity struggles to settle in such a state, not because of lack of worth, but because instability repels continuity. The emotional baseline matters more than emotional peaks. Moments of inspiration can feel expansive, but they do not define vibration. What defines vibration is how someone feels most of the time when nothing dramatic is happening. Is there a quiet sense of pressure, a background hum of worry, a constant comparison with others? These states shape choices in subtle ways. They influence how risks are evaluated, how long-term plans are tolerated, and how discomfort is handled. Money decisions made from chronic tension tend to prioritize relief over coherence. One of the least discussed aspects of vibration is its relationship with perception. Emotional state acts like a lens. When the lens is clouded by fear or urgency, reality appears more threatening than it is. Opportunities feel scarce. Mistakes feel catastrophic. Neutral events are interpreted as confirmation of failure. In this state, even well-intentioned decisions are filtered through defensive logic. The person is not responding to what is happening, but to what they fear might happen. When emotional coherence increases, perception changes without effort. Situations are seen more clearly. Nuance becomes visible. Not every challenge feels personal. Not every delay feels like rejection. This clarity has practical consequences. Financial choices become less dramatic. Conversations feel less charged. Planning becomes possible because the future no longer feels like an enemy to outrun. This shift does not come from forcing positivity, but from allowing the body to experience enough safety to remain present. Safety, in this context, is not the absence of problems. It is the ability to remain regulated while facing them. Many people confuse safety with certainty, but certainty is rare in life. Regulation, however, can be cultivated. When the nervous system learns that discomfort can be tolerated without collapse, vibration stabilizes. This stability allows for patience, and patience allows for better timing. Timing, in turn, affects outcomes more than effort alone. Another subtle dimension of vibration is how it affects receiving. Some people are comfortable striving, but uncomfortable receiving. When something good arrives, tension increases rather than decreases. Questions arise internally. How long will this last? What is expected of me now? What if I lose it? This tension often leads to premature spending, overextension, or self-sabotage. The body attempts to restore familiarity by eliminating the unfamiliar state of having. Prosperity cannot accumulate when receiving feels unsafe. Emotional coherence softens this reaction. As regulation improves, receiving no longer feels like exposure. It feels neutral, even natural. Money becomes information rather than identity. It signals capacity and choice rather than worth. In this state, decisions are guided by alignment instead of fear. Spending reflects intention rather than impulse. Saving reflects care rather than deprivation. Giving reflects generosity rather than obligation. Vibration also influences how mistakes are processed. In a dysregulated state, mistakes are internalized as evidence of inadequacy. Shame follows, and avoidance soon after. In a regulated state, mistakes are contextualized. They become feedback rather than verdicts. This difference is critical for financial growth, which inevitably involves trial, error, and adjustment. Without emotional coherence, learning feels punishing. With it, learning feels informative. There is a quiet humility that emerges as vibration stabilizes. The need to appear spiritually advanced fades. There is less urgency to label experiences as signs or failures. Life is allowed to unfold with complexity. This humility is not resignation, it is maturity. It creates space for curiosity, which is essential for adaptation. Prosperity thrives where curiosity replaces self-judgment. Vibration, then, is not something to be elevated artificially. It is something to be integrated gently. As emotional regulation deepens, the internal environment becomes less reactive. This changes the quality of attention. Attention becomes steadier, less scattered. With steadier attention, patterns are noticed earlier. Early noticing allows for subtle course corrections before crises form. This is one of the most practical benefits of emotional coherence, even though it is rarely described in practical terms. Over time, vibration becomes less about feeling good and more about feeling whole. Wholeness includes discomfort, uncertainty, and responsibility without being overwhelmed by them. From this place, prosperity is no longer chased. It is met. It arrives through decisions that are consistent, through boundaries that are respected, and through a relationship with money that is calm enough to sustain growth. In this chapter, vibration is understood not as an energetic performance, but as an embodied state of coherence. When the inner climate becomes stable, perception clarifies, and choice follows clarity. Prosperity then becomes less mysterious. It emerges as a natural consequence of living from a regulated center rather than a reactive edge. Prosperity as a state of integrity. Sustained over time, prosperity, when stripped of fantasy and excess symbolism, reveals itself as a quiet form of integrity. It is the alignment between what is felt, what is chosen, and what is sustained over time. Throughout this journey, one truth becomes clear. Life does not respond to declarations alone. It responds to patterns. Patterns of attention, patterns of emotion, patterns of decision. When these patterns contradict one another, reality reflects contradiction. When they begin to agree, reality stabilizes. The illusion that prosperity is something external to be unlocked often delays the real work. Not because the work is difficult, but because it is subtle. It requires honesty without self-punishment. It asks for presence rather than performance. Many people have spent years trying to convince life that they are ready, while avoiding the quieter task of becoming internally consistent. Readiness is not proven through intensity, it is revealed through steadiness. When intention becomes clear, it stops negotiating with every impulse. When action becomes coherent, it stops depending on emotional highs. When emotional state becomes regulated, it stops distorting perception. These three elements do not need to be perfected. They need to be synchronized. Synchronization creates trust. Trust creates calm. Calm allows discernment. Discernment leads to better choices. Better choices, repeated without drama, build stability. What often surprises people is how unremarkable this process feels from the inside. There are no constant signs, no dramatic shifts, no sense of being chosen or elevated. Instead, there is a gradual reduction of internal noise. Decisions feel less charged, the future feels less threatening. Money becomes less symbolic and more functional. In this space, prosperity stops being something to prove and starts being something to inhabit. There is also a deeper emotional healing embedded in this process. When choices align with inner truth, self-trust is restored. The inner voice regains credibility. Promises made internally are kept. This repair of self-relationship is often more valuable than any financial outcome because it creates a foundation that does not collapse under pressure. From this foundation, growth becomes sustainable rather than cyclical. Prosperity is not the absence of challenge. It is the ability to face challenge without fragmentation. It is the capacity to remain present when uncertainty arises, to adjust without self-betrayal, and to continue without needing constant reassurance. This capacity is cultivated quietly, through daily coherence rather than dramatic transformation. As this coherence deepens, life begins to respond differently, not because it has changed its rules, but because perception has changed its lens. Opportunities are recognized earlier, limits are respected more clearly, timing improves, Mistakes are integrated instead of repeated. This is how prosperity grows roots, slowly, invisibly, and firmly. In the end, prosperity is not something added to life. It is something that emerges when inner contradiction is reduced. When intention, action, and emotional state begin to speak the same language, reality listens. And in that listening, a different quality of life becomes possible, one that is calmer, clearer, and capable of sustaining what it creates. Before this video ends, allow one question to settle quietly within you, without rushing to answer it or turning it into a judgment. If your current financial reality were the most honest reflection of your inner patterns, not your desires, what would it be showing you about how you relate to safety, time, and yourself? This question is not meant to provoke guilt or urgency. It is meant to invite clarity. Clarity is the doorway through which real change enters. Not dramatic change, but lasting change, the kind that reshapes choices gently and consistently over time. If this reflection resonated with you, consider staying connected to this space. This channel is dedicated to exploring prosperity, manifestation, and personal transformation without illusion and without pressure. Each video is designed to support deeper understanding, emotional coherence, and practical alignment with a life that feels stable and meaningful. By subscribing, you allow these conversations to continue unfolding with you. You choose to remain present in a process that values depth over speed and integrity over performance. New videos will continue guiding this exploration, helping you refine perception, strengthen inner alignment, and relate to prosperity with clarity rather than struggle. As this video comes to a close, remain here on the final screen and continue watching the next content prepared for you. Let this not be an ending, but a continuation. Growth does not happen in a single moment of insight. It happens through sustained reflection and gentle commitment. The next step is already waiting. Stay with it.